There's a moment when nothing goes wrong, but somehow you still feel like you are. No one says anything, no one rejects you, no one even notices, and yet something inside you begins to sink. You start feeling smaller, quieter, less certain. And the strangest part is, you can't even explain why. So where does that feeling come from? Why do people start feeling worthless even when they're not? The answer is quieter than most people expect and far more dangerous. It usually doesn't begin with some dramatic failure. It begins with something subtle. A look that felt a little cold, a message that didn't get a reply, a moment where you spoke and the room moved on like you said nothing at all. Small things, ordinary things. But sometimes ordinary moments land in the mind like evidence. And once that happens, the story begins. Have you ever noticed how one tiny moment can stay in your head for days while 100 good moments disappear without a trace? Why does the mind hold on to silence more tightly than praise? Imagine someone named Daniel. Daniel is not lazy. He is not broken. He is not failing at life. He has a decent job, a predictable routine, and people around him who would probably say he's doing fine. From the outside, nothing looks wrong, but inside, something starts changing. One day, in a meeting, Daniel shares an idea. It isn't mocked, it isn't challenged, it's simply passed over. The conversation keeps moving. Nobody reacts. And that small moment, that simple silence, follows him home. That night, he replays it in his head. Maybe they ignored me. Maybe it sounded stupid. Maybe I'm just not the kind of person people listen to. The next day, he says a little less, then a little less after that. He starts editing himself before he speaks. He becomes more careful, more distant, more restrained. Not because anyone told him he was worthless, but because his mind has started searching for a reason that the silence happened. And the easiest explanation is always the cruelest one. It must be me. That is how it starts. Not with proof, but with interpretation. Not with reality, but with meaning. When your sense of self becomes fragile, you stop seeing events as neutral. Everything begins to feel personal. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A distracted tone feels like disrespect. Constructive feedback feels like exposure. Neutral moments begin to carry emotional weight they were never meant to hold. Have you ever felt this happen to you? Have you ever turned one quiet moment into a verdict about your entire worth? Daniel doesn't notice the shift at first. He just feels heavier. At work, he becomes less confident. In conversations, he starts second-guessing his words while he's still saying them. Around friends, he laughs when expected, but feels strangely disconnected, like he's there physically, but absent somewhere deeper. There is no dramatic breakdown, just a slow erosion, and that's what makes it dangerous. Because when worthlessness enters quietly, it feels honest. It doesn't feel like a distortion. It feels like a truth you're finally seeing clearly. At night, when things get still, the feeling gets louder. He starts remembering old mistakes more vividly than old wins. Embarrassing moments return with fresh emotion. Missed chances begin to look like proof of limitation. He thinks about things he should have said, things he should have done, versions of himself he should have become by now. And underneath all of it is confusion. Why does this always happen? Why can one moment of silence feel heavier than 10 moments of acceptance? The answer lies in something most people never notice. The mind is not just recording life, it is explaining life. It is assigning causes, building patterns, telling stories. And once you begin to doubt your own value, the mind starts bending reality around that doubt. Psychologically, this is what happens when negative self-attribution takes over. Instead of saying, "That moment was awkward," you say, "I am awkward." Instead of saying, "They were distracted," you say, "I was ignored because I don't matter." Instead of saying, "I made a mistake," you say, "This is what I am, a mistake." And once the brain learns that pattern, it becomes efficient at protecting it. It starts collecting evidence, highlighting pain, and hiding anything that challenges the story. That is why people can feel worthless even when they are loved, even when they are capable, even when they are needed. Because worthlessness is rarely born from facts. It is born from repetition, the repeated interpretation that something negative must always point back to you. Then one day, something happens that Daniel does not expect. His manager calls him in. He assumes it's because he made another mistake, or missed something, or disappointed someone again. But instead, she asks him to take on a new project. She tells him he's been consistent, reliable, thoughtful. She says she trusts him with more responsibility. And for a second, Daniel doesn't know how to react, because those words do not fit the version of himself he has been carrying. If he is as important as he feels, then why would someone trust him? If he is as invisible as he believes, then why was someone watching his effort at all? And in that moment, something cracks, not his pain, but the certainty of it. He starts realizing that the feeling of worthlessness was not proof, it was a lens, a distorted one. He thinks back to the meeting that started it all. Maybe nobody reacted because they were distracted. Maybe the room was tired. Maybe the conversation moved too fast. Maybe that silence had nothing to do with his value. Maybe the meaning he gave that moment was the real wound. And that changes everything. Because the most painful part of feeling worthless is not that life always confirms it. It's that your mind becomes skilled at translating life in a way that keeps the feeling alive. That is the hidden truth. A person can be respected and still feel invisible. A person can be loved and still feel unchosen. A person can be enough and still feel behind. Not because those things are true, but because pain changes the way truth is processed. So the next time you feel that familiar heaviness, the next time silence starts sounding like rejection, pause for a second and ask yourself a better question. Not what is wrong with me, but what story am I telling myself right now? Because that question can interrupt the pattern. It can break the spell. It can remind you that your mind is not always revealing the truth. Sometimes it is repeating an old wound in a new moment. Feeling worthless does not mean you are worthless. It may only mean that somewhere along the way, you learned to measure your value through silence, fear, and moments that were never meant to define you. Your worth was never removed, only hidden beneath a story that felt real for too long. Sometimes the cruelest lies are the ones said in your own voice, and sometimes the beginning of healing is simply recognizing that voice for what it is. Not truth, just pain trying to explain itself. If this made you think, subscribe to Brain Equity for more deep psychological stories that reveal the hidden patterns shaping your life.